So we have our books open to page 221, chapter 9, and it says, do we have early testimony about Jesus? Follow along with me in your book, please. Historical evidence moves us a long way towards demonstrating our belief. As a result, the faith that is necessary to fill in the remaining gap is reasonable. That's Dr. Craig Blomberg. The Gospel according to non-Christians. In AD 66, Jews in Palestine initiated a revolt against Roman rule that, to put it mildly, the Romans did not appreciate. The emperor sent troops led by General Vespasian to squash the rebellion and regain control of rebel areas. In 67, Vespasian laid siege to the rebel town of Jotapata in Galilee. On the 47th day of that siege, a young Jewish revolutionary chose to surrender to the superior Roman army rather than commit suicide, a fate many of his countrymen had chosen. The young man won favor with Vespasian and was later taken to Rome by General Titus, Vespasian's son, after Titus destroyed Jerusalem and the Jewish temple in 70. The young man was Flavius Josephus. He lived from about AD 37 to AD 100, who ultimately became the greatest Jewish historian of his time. Josephus began his historical writings in Rome while serving as a historian for the Roman Emperor Domitian. It was there that he authored his autobiography and two major historical works. One of those works is his now famous Antiquities of the Jews, which he finished in about AD 93. In Book 18, Chapter 3, Section 3 of that work, Josephus, who was not a Christian, he was born Jewish and ended up as part of the Roman Empire, not a Christian, wrote these words. At this time, the time of Pilate, there was a wise man who was called Jesus. His conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous. And many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die, but those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion, and that he was alive. Accordingly, he was perhaps the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets had recounted wonders. That wasn't Josephus's only mention of Jesus. In another passage from Antiquities, Josephus revealed how the new high priest of the Jews, Annas the Younger, took advantage of a gap in Roman rule to kill James, the brother of Jesus. It was AD 62, and the Roman governor Festus died suddenly in office. 3 months elapsed before his successor, Albinus, could get to Judea, allowing ample time for Annas to do his dirty work. Josephus describes the incident this way. Festus was now dead, and Albinus was but upon the road. So he, Annas the high priest, assembled the Sanhedrin of the judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others, or some of his companions. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. So here we have not only another first century reference to Jesus, but confirmation that he had a brother named James, who obviously was not well liked by the Jewish authorities. Could it be that James was martyred because he was the leader of the Jerusalem church, as the New Testament implies? Just how many non-Christian sources are there that mention Jesus? Including Josephus, there are 10 known non-Christian writers who mention Jesus within 150 years of his life. By contrast, over the same 150 years, there are 9 non-Christian sources that mention Tiberius Caesar, the Roman emperor, at the time of Jesus. So, discounting all Christian sources, Jesus is actually mentioned by one more source than the Roman emperor. If you include the Christian sources, authors mentioning Jesus outnumbering those mentioning Tiberius 43 to 10. Some of these non-Christian sources, such as Celsus, Tacitus, and the Jewish Talmud, could be considered anti-Christian sources. While these works do not have any eyewitness testimony that contradicts events described in the New Testament documents, they are works written by writers whose tone is decidedly anti-Christian. What can we learn from them and the more neutral non-Christian sources? We learn that they admit certain facts about early Christianity that help us piece together a storyline that is surprisingly congruent, agreeing with the New Testament. Piecing together all the 10 non-Christian references, we see that 1, Jesus lived during the time of Tiberius Caesar. 2, he lived a virtuous life. 3, he was a wonder worker, a miracle worker. 4, he had a brother named James. 5, he was acclaimed to be the Messiah. 6, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. 7, he was crucified on the eve of the Jewish Passover. 8, darkness and an earthquake occurred when he died. 9, his disciples believed he rose from the dead. 10, his disciples were willing to die for that belief. 11, Christianity spread rapidly as far as Rome. 12, his disciples denied the Roman gods and worshipped Jesus as God. In light of these non-Christian references, the theory that Jesus never existed is clearly unreasonable. How could non-Christian writers collectively reveal a storyline congruent with the New Testament if Jesus never existed? Now, there really aren't many people anymore that believe Jesus never existed, but in the mid-20th century, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, there was talk about Jesus never existed, and clearly that's not credible. But the implications run even deeper than that. What does this say about the New Testament? On the face of it, non-Christian sources affirm the New Testament. While the non-Christian authors don't say they believe in the resurrection, they report that the disciples certainly believed in it. Since, as we have shown, the existence of God is the possibility, and the possibility of miracles is firmly established through natural revelation, and the general story of Christ and the early church is affirmed through the non-Christian sources, did the miracles of Christ actually occur as the disciples claim? Do the New Testament documents record actual history? Could it be that they are not biased religious writings full of myths and fables, as many in our modern world assume, but instead describe events that actually occurred about 2,000 years ago? If so, we'll be well on our way to discovering which theistic religion is true. To see if the New Testament is a record of actual history, we need to answer 2 questions concerning the documents that comprise the New Testament. 1, do we have accurate copies of the original documents that were written down in the 1st century? And 2, do those documents speak the truth? In order to believe the New Testament message, both of those questions must be answered in the affirmative. It's not enough to just give evidence that we have an accurate copy of the original 1st century documents, because those documents could be telling lies. We must have an accurate copy of the documents and have reason to believe that those documents describe what really happened nearly 2,000 years ago. Question 2. Let's begin with question 1. So we will stop there for now. And if you would please open your literary books to the Quick of chapter 9. We are on page 64 of the literary book. So Equip question 1 asks this: who was Flavius Josephus, and why is he considered an important figure in early Christian history, even though he wasn't himself a Christian? Who was he first, Quentin?
He was Jewish revolutionary that got captured by the Roman.
Okay, yeah, so he was captured by the Roman Empire. He's a Jewish man and was part of the insurrection against Rome. And he surrendered and went to Rome and became the greatest Jewish historian of his day. People who don't know much about Christianity know about Josephus if they know anything about history. He lived shortly after the time of Jesus. He wasn't a contemporary of Jesus, but he lived shortly after. Born in 37, so he was born shortly after Jesus died. Now, why is he important?
Christian source on this.
Yeah, he's a non-Christian source that tells the same basic storyline as the New Testament does about Jesus. He doesn't contradict the New Testament at all. He confirms it. And he was a very careful, very respected historian. And again, not a follower of Christ. So that his works carry a lot of weight. And his works show a basic storyline that's consistent with the New Testament. Jake.
For
You need to, yeah. So your chapter 9 papers are based both on chapter 7 of Tim Keller and chapter 9 in this book, and part of the requirement is that you use both. Okay. Number 2, how many non-Christian sources are there that mention Jesus? Yes, there are 10 non-Christian. If you add the Christian sources, you get 43. What facts would be revealed if you looked at all the non-Christian sources and pieced them together with the gospel account? So turn to page 223. And you see that list of 12 things. I want you to write those down before you start writing them down. When you're done with that, I want you to read pages 224 to 230. I'm going to write that on the board. I think you should be able to get that done before the end of the hour. Then you don't have to do any more questions, though. So read pages 224. Once you're done with that, writing out that list.
there should be right like
Yeah, there's not a lot of room there. You have to write small and maybe find some room on another page that.
we just write
That's
page
what
223.
I want you to write them down because that helps you remember them.